Good morning. We'll call this Wednesday morning, February 10th meeting of the Criminal Justice Meeting to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Lear?
He's on mute.
He's on mute. There he is.
Present.
Mr. Snipes? Miss Peters?
Present.
Miss Parker?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Carrico?
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Present.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Collins?
Present.
Mr. Kenneth Smith?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Seroy?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Under public comment, we have Louis Faber from the River Conservancy District. If you'd like to come up front here.
Where do you want me at?
Right there, sir.
Morning. My name's Louis Faber. I'm with the Illinois Conservation Police. In the back with me today, I have Brian Elliott, my coworker. We're two local conservation police officers here in Kankakee County. I just want to talk today about a couple river-related instances in the past year. In June of 2019, we investigated a fatal watercraft accident. It would have been about a half-mile west of the Indiana state line in Momence. So during this accident, it was one of a kind. Nobody had ever been through anything like it statewide. It was all hands on deck. There's a few people I need to thank. The Illinois State Police District 21, Kankakee County Sheriff's Department, Kankakee County Coroner's Office, and the Momence Fire Department, along with several agencies out of Indiana. It was definitely a challenge. But through the process, basically what happened, two guys and a dog were on a boat, high water. They got swept into a log jam. The boat overturned. The operator of the boat and the dog got entangled in the log jam, and our mission was to recover them. Throughout the process, it was a 2-week process trying to recover these guys, and we had people there every day. There was one group, county group, that definitely stayed with me every day, and that was the coroner's office. So Bob Gessner and his team, every day, it was either a call or he was on scene. You know, there was a couple days where Bob was on the boat with me physically. I took him in, put him in a life jacket, took him through the backwaters. He's probably thinking I'm crazy, some of the routes we took to get back there, but it's what we had to do. Every day he was with me. He made every single resource available to us during our mission. I mean, it was one of a kind. But whether it was money, funding, everything he could do to help us, he was there every day, either in person or on the phone. We appreciate that. Since then, I've been able to work with him side by side on other, river-related significant incidents, and they kind of pose a different challenge than something that happens on the road. And the most recent one, we were on the boat with Brian Elliott, Bob, and I, and the ISP investigator, and we had to exit the boat and get in the water to accomplish our mission, right? And Elliott and I had hip waders on, and we get out, and I'm kind of looking over, and I see Bob rolling up his pant legs. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm going in. I said, no, you don't have to go in. We got Elliott, fireman, we'll handle it. Before I got done with my sentence, he's jumped off over the boat, and he's in the middle of the river, knee deep with the current flowing, working side by side with us. So I truly think we have a coroner who leads by example and leads from the front, which is very important when it comes to leadership. So I'm here today to present him with an award from the Department of Natural Resources Conservation Police, Office of Law Enforcement. So Bob, if you would come up, Brian, if you'd bring the award.
Put your mask on.
like I said, this is a certificate. You were nominated and selected to receive this award from the IDNR Office of Law Enforcement. All right. It's for your assistance in the recovery of a boating accident victim on the Kinky River. You assisted and coordinated daily recovery efforts and offered all available county and local resources throughout the recovery mission. We appreciate your help.
That's all I had, sir.
Hang on there. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then as
Right now.
all right, take the mask off. I appreciate this, and I'll hang this in my office in honor of. Thank you very much. We you said a lot about me, but I didn't say a lot about you. For what equipment did you bring to the scene, and your sonars, and to be able to find those bodies is unbelievable. And for the work that you did to tear that all that lumber and stuff that was in the middle of the river, holding back all the streams out of there, and to be able to find that guy, it was because of you guys. And I know we see a lot on the river, and I'm glad to see you come up here and to recognize that the county board and who they are. They do a lot for us, and I just appreciate that. And to see you guys come there is a relief on me to know that we're going to find that body. So, and it means a lot. So. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I'd like to get a motion to combine and approve the minutes of January 13th, the circuit clerk's report, the state's attorney's report, the public defender's report, probation report, and the coroner's report.
Make a motion that we combine and approve.
Mr. Snipes, second by Mr. Long. We will have the vote at the end of all the presentations. Up next is Chief Judge Kramer.
Thank you, Chairman Hess. Good morning, everyone. It's
Good
with
morning.
great pleasure today that I announce that Attorney Nancy Nicholson has been selected as the new Associate Judge in the 21st Judicial Circuit. Many of you know Nancy from her work with the County Board. Ms. Nicholson will be sworn in tomorrow at 4 p.m. In our ceremonial courtroom, room 300, and also on Zoom. And her first day on the bench will be next Tuesday. This will bring us back to a full complement of judges here in Kankakee County, which hasn't been the case since Judge Erickson's retirement this fall. So we're looking forward to having Nancy join us on the bench. If you see her, please wish her well. This is going to be a challenge for our judicial system because with a new judge, we need a clerk to help her, and those resources in the clerk's office, as I'm sure you'll hear from Ms. Cianci, are stretched thin at the moment. So I just wanted to let you know that we're very excited about having Nancy join us. I feel bad taking her away from the state's attorney's office, but she's going to be serving our county well on the bench. So that's why I'm here this morning. Is there any questions about that? I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the Chief Judge?
All right, thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Snipes had a question.
Okay.
Judge, when I saw you said that you felt sad, I didn't see a tear come from your eye. It was almost like a little smile.
Well, this is another person that's come out of the state's attorney's office to join our bench. Judge Nicholson also joins Judge Dickinson, who also was in the state's attorney's office. But they're the largest law firm around, so it's not unusual that some of their people get picked off for some of these other positions. So, State's Attorney Rowe has a very good group of attorneys in that office, and that's what happens sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
You bet. Up next, Circuit Clerk, Ms. Cianci. your monthly
Good morning.
report.
Good morning. So there's nothing too major on the distribution list, nothing unusual. The Harris & Harris report, as you can see, we increased over the last 5 years. We had the best return with $80,000. So that was really good with the collection recoveries. And then the state's attorney collection court that they had, it was a little slower this year than last year, but that's probably more the normal than us, you know, with people being unemployed and things. It's been hard for them to make, you know, their payments. But I also, maybe some of them are bringing their stimulus checks and paying off some things. I don't know. We had somebody pay the other day like $2,000, and most of them were in singles, so we had a lot of singles to take care of. So that's really about it for that. I took the computerization off the agenda until I have something to report. I do, however, have something to report right now. I have a new team assembled with the Tyler Technologies group. They are very committed to get this going. So as soon as I have any brighter information, I will let you know about that. The other thing, like Judge Kramer said, with our 10th judge, I have held off over the course of time in putting someone in that position until I knew when the new judge was going to be sworn in. So I did proactively hire someone at the beginning of the year, January 11th. She's phenomenal. She's really picked up a lot of the processes that we have, and she's very interested in learning how and why, you know, why things are happening. She studies the computer on the weekend, looking at court views so that she could read minutes and understand what's going on. She will be a great addition to our office. She is a great addition. The other thing is, too, I just want to talk about my staff. They've been phenomenal throughout this whole pandemic thing. You know, there were times when we were working half of the office in and half of the office out, rotating back and forth, and still being able to provide customer service to everyone that comes in or calls or emails, or, you know, we receive requests from every angle that you can think. So we're back to full staff now, and we're just cruising right along. So if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Yancey?
Very good.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Up next, State's Attorney, Mr. Rowe. Have the grand jury report and the grand jury statistic report.
Good morning, everyone. You can see that year-to-date through the first grand jury in February, we're at 153. That's probably, I spoke with Mr. Pennewick recently, and it's a big number for this early in the year for sure. But I'm guessing that the majority of it is because we had somewhat of a backlog from last year while we were trying to go between preliminary hearings and grand jury proceedings. So hopefully it's still just catch up. But of those 153, 38 of them are offenses against a person, again, still led by felony domestic batteries. I know we talk about this at every meeting, but I just want to remind some of the new members, felony domestic battery, it becomes a felony because it either involves strangulation, great bodily harm, or it's a repeat offender, someone who's previously been convicted of a domestic battery. So those are obviously very serious offenses. 20 of the offenses out of 153 charged this year involve an offense with a deadly weapon. That's certainly concerning. And then 22 of the offenses you'll see on there are retail thefts. I want to assure you that probably 90% of those cases, the individual was offered the diversion program, either was non-responsive or rejected the diversion program, so the case is then filed. Although the case is now in the court system, they will be offered that diversion program again. Sometimes it becomes a little bit more real to them when they're standing in court and they want to avail themselves of that opportunity. We can't force them to, but I can assure you in most of those cases, that option is offered. So that's all I've got. You know, you can see, I think we put 51 cases through the grand jury in this last session. I mean, in the past, you know, when we were at the height of it in 2019, when we had the most cases ever for a year go through grand jury, we were trying to cap that around 40 per session. So you can see we're trying to get caught up. We're starting our grand jury proceedings earlier in the day. We're giving them a lunch break. They're coming back for a little bit in the afternoon. So it's definitely taxing our office, having prosecutors in grand jury. I'm sure it's taxing the local law enforcement departments by having to have more officers appear at the grand jury proceedings. But I have got to get caught up. At some point here, the Supreme Court's probably going to lift the moratorium on speedy trial demands, which is going to further kind of put us behind the gun, so to say. So we're trying to get caught up as best we can. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, I look at the totals, and obviously we know what the numbers are, but basically half of these are for the city of Kankakee, about 75, and I know that's probably a historic trend, if you will, but it's troubling to see, and I don't know how to attack that. I'm sure that's something that occupies your time. But what really struck me is that the 14 on the list for Cannabis Control Substance Act, is that, when I see cannabis, are there still arrests made for cannabis?
That should probably be updated on our offense list, or at least separated out. There's very few instances in which someone is going to be charged with a cannabis-related offense these days. Those are primarily heroin, cocaine. You can see we have broken out, I think, the methamphetamine. There have been a few meth cases this year. So those are primarily controlled substances.
So really, the only things that we would have here is if they're carrying too much weight or improperly in the car or something like that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, really in Illinois, there's very few instances now where someone is going to be prosecuted for possessing marijuana.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe? On Zoom?
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jim.
Just one for Jim.
Oh. Up next, we have the public defender, Mr. Pentewick. Your monthly report, sir?
Correct. It's relatively self-explanatory. The courthouse is getting close to back to normal as can be expected. All the cases that were continued through the COVID are finally getting court dates, primarily in March. I think it's going to get very busy. So in that regards, we're trying to get the cases moving along and trying to keep on track as far as that goes. Other than that, we're just plugging along at this point. I got nothing special or new to report unless anyone has any questions for me.
Questions for Mr. Pentewick? Don't see any yet.
All right. Too bad Mr. Hunter isn't here because I had a response to his intern question, but I'll get him next month.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, probation, Mr. Latham. Your monthly report, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nothing much to add. As January, you can see we had 2,144 successful contacts in January and 237 drug tests. Hopefully those numbers will move closer to normal as we move through this year, past the pandemic. We also have 200 individuals on pretrial supervision. Pretrial and electronic monitoring are going to be two areas we really watch as we move through this year and through next year, closer to January of 23, when we'll probably move to a no cash bail. So those are two areas I think will grow a lot. So we'll watch those as we move along. That's all I have on the report.
Questions on the report for Mr. Latham? Anything else, Tom?
Yeah, real quick. Speaking of no cash bail and pretrial, next week I have the first of what will be monthly Zoom calls with AOIC, Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, to discuss the impact of Bill 3635 and the impact in each county and circuit. We'll discuss what we think supervision numbers will be as we move through 23, the need for additional officers, and the need that are these positions going to be fully funded by the state. So the cost of new salaries is one thing, but there's also additional cost to each position we have, and that's spaces, workspaces, computers, vehicles, training, and all those other costs. So that'll be something we discuss on a regular basis with them, and I'll bring that back to the committee, any updates. Lastly, I wanted to point out, last week we had a virtual drug court graduation. I'm not sure how many were able to view it. We had 7 graduates. And I just wanted to point out, supervising everybody, both adult and juveniles, during the pandemic was difficult. But this was a problem-solving course, which is an intense, team-based supervision. I can't say enough the job our officers did, and everybody on the team, the state's attorney, public defender, the judge, treatment providers, the VA. Everyone's done an excellent job trying to manage that specialty court and get through this pandemic. So I just wanted to say, hopefully the next graduation will be in person.
And you owe us all cake, because we didn't get any cake after the graduation this time.
First time we're in person, we'll make it all up. We'll have a lot of...
Okay. I was going to mention that to the chief judge, and I forgot. Any other questions for Mr. Latham? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the sheriff. Sheriff Downing. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. So the report, can certainly discuss anything on the report that you may have questions about, but there's really nothing of anything unusual other than our locals remain high. We'll see what happens. There's a reason for that. A lot of our Illinois Department of Corrections, those inmates that are sentenced to Illinois Department of Corrections, prior to the pandemic, we would take those inmates to DOC probably within 3 to 5 days, depending on the day of the week that they were sentenced. Now it's at least 2 months before we're able to get them out of our jail. And when you start calculating money, and we talked about this a while back about the cost of housing these individuals who should be in the Illinois Department of Corrections who remain in our custody. Just as an example, one inmate who is in our custody for 60 days who should be in the Illinois Department of Corrections costs us about $102 per day, or in those 60 days about $6,120. Now when you multiply that by the 25 inmates that we have waiting to go to the Illinois Department of Corrections, you're talking about over $150,000, and that's for every 60 days. So when you start to do the math on that, that's a lot of money, and it's money that nobody takes into account. Everybody thinks, oh, it's okay. We have this executive order. The Department of Corrections has now come up with these rules, and we're basically at their mercy. But that mercy is costing local taxpayers a lot of money. So this committee should be aware of that. So, questions on that?
Have we ever received any payments from the state?
Not a dime.
Okay.
There's still, so in their defense, there is still pending litigation. So they're not going to talk to anybody or pay anybody until this litigation is over. So,
Mr. Long.
How about the cost of their medical while they're in that 20 to 60 day period?
That's all included in that $102 when you factor in everything, our utilities, because we have to have the utilities whether we have one inmate or 50. But when we figure out cost, we figure out the cost of our medical department as well. So that's all included in everything. But when we sent our invoices to the Illinois Department of Corrections early on, when they weren't taking anybody, we did separate. We charged them the $90 per day of what we get from our feds, but we also added the medical costs because some of that was hospitalizations, some of it was outside doctor's appointments and things like that. So, yeah, it is included in it.
Memory. That was the first bill was 300 and some thousand.
The total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total.
The total. The first bill was like $160,000, but the total up through August 4th is $370,000 or $80,000.
And now we're into February.
We're into February, but again, we're not. It's going to be difficult to bill because they are taking them. They've just slowed the process. The unfortunate part is this process. What's going to happen is it's more than likely not going to get any better, whether we have COVID or not. I think they've pretty much. And they're almost. I believe there are some states. I believe Indiana may be one, that those that are sentenced to a particular time frame. Right now, anybody sentenced to less than 365 days stays at the county jail. Anybody sentenced to 365 days or more goes to the Illinois Department of Corrections. We are anticipating that at some point the state's going to say, anybody sentenced to 2 years now stays at the county jail. So that's all legislation that's out there, talk that's out there. So that's going to be, again, another cost to all of us locally as opposed to going to the Illinois Department of Corrections.
Mr. Long?
We've been talking about the type of message that we want to send to our state legislature, and through our executive committee, going to sit down and talk about parameters and things that we want to talk about, some of it having to do with this House bill. I think that should be on that list as well. The back payment, number one. Secondly, how are they going to handle this extra time that we're going to be taking care of these prisoners? And quite frankly, you could get us, the liability of medical costs and stuff like that. That number could grow way higher than $102 a day.
Agreed.
So maybe we should take that to executive committee with us.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
That's all for the report. I don't know if...
Any questions on the monthly report? Anybody on Zoom? Oh, go ahead.
That was really all my agenda items other than animal control, but I do have a couple other issues. Just to keep the committee updated, with the COVID issues going on at Jerome Combs, we have gotten through the majority of COVID. Fortunately, there has been nobody who has been seriously ill. Right now, we have 11 inmates who are still positive, who are going through the process. I think their completion date of recovery, or that 14 days that they tell you that they've recovered, I believe is February 22nd or 23rd, I think. So once those individuals get through this, then we will be COVID free. All those individuals who are still positive, if you will, are all local inmates. So everybody else has recovered.
Mr. Snipes.
Bring me to a question. Those individuals that are positive, they have not affected our staff.
Oh yeah,
they have affected our staff.
Oh yeah, we have a number of staff who have tested positive who stay home for their 14 days. Unfortunately, none of them have been serious either. Okay. But yeah, we're in the same building, we're in the same housing unit, and it's contact. So obviously we have a mask mandate for everybody. Obviously with our employees, we can enforce it a lot better than we can with the inmates. We can tell any inmate to make sure they put their mask on, but if they don't, the repercussions from that, I mean, what are they? Do we lock somebody down in isolation till they put their mask on? Do we tase them because they're not putting their mask on? I mean, what do you do? So we can say, put your mask on, just like you can anywhere else in the community. Doesn't mean they will, because obviously if they're there, they don't follow the rules as it is. So hasn't been that problematic, but there are those who aren't going to wear their mask, just like there are those who are not going to wear their mask out in public who aren't in custody. So,
which brings me to my second question. Because those individuals, the correction officers, are on front, they're part of the first responders. Have they been given the opportunity to take the shot if they so require?
Yes. Yeah. So, the health department, who has done a good job of communicating with us in more ways than just the vaccine. But so our staff has had the same opportunity as anybody to fill out that. If they're in 1B, which the correctional officers are, they can fill out that response to the email that the health department sent out. Some have gotten it, some have chosen not to, but we obviously haven't mandated it.
The term isolation was used there in the conversation just a little bit ago. The comment yesterday in public comment, was that the only case of isolation?
No. When in isolation, if isolation means putting somebody in a cell for 14 days, it's, because it's a jail facility, it's much like being at your house, even though you can move from room to room in most cases. But if you have more than one person in your house, somebody's going to be relegated to somewhere where you're going to stay away from the rest of your family. It's just a jail setting. That's just the difference between being at home isolated or being in a jail isolated. So.
Okay. Go ahead.
And the vaccine, Mr. Snipes brought up the vaccine. We have surveyed our inmates and detainees. I think I may have mentioned this at the finance meeting. Of the approximately 520 inmates we have, 142 inmates have indicated that they want the vaccine. Obviously significantly less than half, but again, that's a personal choice. Once the health department is able to get the doses for us, they will come in and administer those vaccines to our inmates. So to give you some comparison, Kane County has approximately 400 inmates in their jail, and they had 160 inmates take the vaccine. So our numbers aren't that far off from others. It's just I guess it's just what you believe in and what you trust as far as the vaccine. So. Last part on the sheriff's report, or the sheriff's is body cams. As most of you know, House Bill 3653 is going to require body cams, of course, without any funding, which is, par for the course for the state of Illinois. We have been ahead of this from the standpoint of, we have looked into this. I've reported to this committee a number of times about the cost associated with the cameras, and the cameras themselves are not the expensive part. In fact, there's all kinds of grants out there available for the cameras themselves. The cost is all the storage. So we have a price quote from a company, and I'm not gonna, I can tell you the price if you want. This company is what we have, is the same company we have with our in-car cameras. So for us to get away from using this company and using a different company that may not be compatible with the current in-car cameras we have, so that would even be more costly. So this company is who we have been using their in-car cameras, and the best bang for our buck is going to be to stay with that company, because it's just an added cost. We're not going to have to replace any of our in-car camera stuff. So is it appropriate to tell you the price, or?
I just have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Ritter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should start with the one question: is it over 30 grand?
Yeah.
we should probably not say the price because we're gonna have to bid it. So I don't think it'd be fair in a bid process to say that here. But hold on to it. I know that there's other considerations.
Well, here's the problem.
Yeah.
The price we received is the price now. If, and there's a good likelihood that House Bill 3653 is going to be signed, the way companies work with government, once it's mandatory, these prices are going to go up significantly, because that's what companies do to government a lot of times. We're stuck. I mean, it's, you know, so.
I think it's probably, if we have to, if the state's attorney says.
We will, yeah, I was just going to say, we can
wait.
Well,
I'm saying the price, but I think we should move forward. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll definitely talk to, well, I guess I won't talk to Nancy anymore, but I guess I'll talk to, I'll talk to Jim and have him see if there's a way that we can just use the same company regardless of the fact that it goes over.
Yeah. It falls under responsible bidder.
Yes.
The ordinance of connecting to the current system, if you will.
Right.
Yeah,
so
interact with the
not
current
cost.
system, yeah.
Does that make sense?
And-
that's what we're talking about.
And again, and when I talk about cost, I mean, regardless of the cost of the cameras and the stores themselves, whatever that may end up, you know, the additional cost is going to be that person that's got to answer FOIAs. And in those FOIAs, you have to redact a lot of things in that. So first of all, you have to review the footage. Then you have to redact things. And those that are going to want this footage are the state's attorney's office for when they go to trial, the public defender's office, or their private attorney when they're defending their client, the offender themselves, and in some cases the insurance company. So, you know, you're going to have a lot of personnel involved in trying to answer these FOIAs, because I'll tell you, in talking to other departments who have body cams, the FOIAs are just, the number is atrocious as far as us trying to accommodate. And of course, with FOIA, you have to get everything within 5 days. And so it becomes problematic for staff to do that. So just keep that in mind, that while the cost of these cameras and the cost of the storage is one thing, the cost of everything else outside of that to accommodate those requesting that is going to be a big number as well.
Mr. Snipes.
Without giving any numbers, would that cost exceed $150,000?
The cost of
the cameras that we're proposing with this mandate?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was wondering if we can attribute $150,000 that the state owes us and send them the bill, just as our unfunded mandate. That's all.
That would be a great scenario, but I think we'd be waiting long after you and I are gone, that we'd still be waiting for payment.
Go ahead.
And then lastly, animal control. I just want to bring up, I think I mentioned this last month about the animal cruelty case we had, where we found a dog that was zip tied, and with the assistance of, along with animal control, along with our deputies, and along with assistance from the state's attorney's office, they were able to get a search warrant. They confiscated all the animals at the residence. There was cats and dogs both, and an arrest was made to that individual as well. So credit to our animal control officers, the deputies that helped, and the state's attorney's office for helping us through the search warrant process, which led to the arrest of that person. So and that's all I got.
Any other questions for the sheriff on the report or the animal control? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Up next, coroner, Mr. Gessner, monthly report and monthly receipts.
Well, good morning again.
Good morning again.
basically everything. Did you go ahead with everything?
Go ahead.
All right. Just looking at our statistics, our summary report for the month of January. Thank God it didn't go like December. December was terrible. We came down quite a bit. We only had 5 autopsies, 5 toxicologies, and on down the line here, it was stayed pretty quiet in January. Hopefully, it continually does that for us. Right now, our ODs are at 7 right now. 7 cases and 2 pending. The average age is at 49. The youngest is 29, and 56 is the oldest. 5 males, 2 females. Again, the drugs that are being used out there is definitely going to fentanyl just about automatically. A little cocaine, as the sheriff mentioned, a little bit of meth is going. I'm passing out a little sheet there of fentanyl. People always ask me how strong is fentanyl. That'll show you the lethal death of heroin and the lethal death of fentanyl, and you can see it's just very, very minute. And that's the drug that's out there in our county. As I sit on the board of Homeland Security, I've got this bulletin about another fentanyl moving into our area. Actually, I got a good tip from the coroner from Peoria that Florinol, fentanyl, and brofentanil, or brofene, are 2 powerful drugs coming from the fentanyl family that we're alerted to. And all of a sudden, we already got one in Kankakee, and we have 1 pending in Pembroke right now of that particular drug. It's a little bit more powerful than fentanyl, but it was still, as you can see in that picture there, fentanyl is extremely powerful. And again, all of our officers in our county are well aware of all this. I sent all this out to them. Also, they're well protected out there and continue to be protected with that particular drug. Other than that, Bones, if any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Gessner? Anything else for us?
That's it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a roll call vote on all the reports.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Long? Aye. Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Ms. Peters?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Aye.
Mr. Daryl Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Mr. Kenneth Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Seroy?
Aye.
Motion carries.
carries.
Is there any old business to come before the committee? Any old business? Any new business to come before the committee? Mr. Snipes.
Thank you. Chair, just a comment, and I think this comment comes, we have a state's attorney that we know that's in the community and does a lot of things in the community, and definitely his work and his volunteerism speaks for itself, along with others. But a lot of times, from time to time, I am asked about judges, and I am probably one of the few county board members that goes into these courtrooms from time to time, especially during the summer, just monitor them or just kind of show up into their courtrooms. And though we having a change, back when I started, Judge McIntyre, some of these names you probably won't know, but Judge McIntyre, Judge Dyer, Reagan, Benson, Erickson, we do know Judge Erickson, Judge Elliott, and Judge Rowe, no, not yet. But but I have had the opportunity to work with them, and a lot of times you negate a lot of things that people say. I think Judge Gould kind of gave me the best lesson. I remember when I walked in this courtroom and there was a lady from Olivet that said that this young man had, you know, he needed someone to speak on his behalf. And I walked in the courtroom and just taking her word for it or wherever, and Judge Gould read off this list and says, okay, based up, you know, upon the evidence, and then the record, you know, he says, I listened to Mr. Snipes, a credible witness. He comes in, and so he kind of reduced these charges, and my mouth flew open when he read those charges because what the person had told me, and from that day, Judge Gould said, this is what happens when you have cases before you. And he says, and sometimes when you heard one part of the story and you advocate for that particular person, there's another part of the story that you basically have to get. And that was a valuable lesson when you give your word or your credibility, I mean, put it up on the line, what judges have to go through. And a lot of times they sit on those benches, and sometimes people just criticize or whatever. And I've been before them in cases. I've heard cases. I look at their decorum, and I can't say in the 21st Circuit we have some good judges. I look when people say this and that is wrong, and when I look at the case, and sometimes they'll let you, you know, for the most part, some student, when it's their first time coming in, they want you to walk in with them, and these judges have been very cordial in that aspect in listening to you, or if I have to show up at a sentencing hearing because of a shooting that has occurred and a funeral that has taken place of a loved one that basically wants things or whatever, do know that these judges are compassionate, even though they sit in a seat where they're the trier of the fact and listen to both sides. Fundamentally fair, they are. And so a lot of times they go under the radar for not being as recognized for what they do, and then they have to live more of a private lifestyle because they can't really be out there in the public like they want to. So it's a sacrifice on their part when they do this. But to just say today, let's, you know, not forget the judges that are in the 21st Circuit. Kudos to them in their jobs. I know they don't hear it a lot. Sometimes the decision is not always favorable to an individual, but fundamentally, from examining their courtrooms, it's been fair. And that's one of the things when I sitting there observing them, listening to individuals that they could have just held in contempt because of their attitude or whatever and their patience. I think that we just need to send kudos out to them because they're kind of even behind the scenes, even though they're in the courtroom, we see them, but basically behind the scenes as far as you see them a lot into the community, but know that you do have on this 21st Circuit a lot of most of the judges. I have not come across one yet that's not been bad. And just a note to end on is I remember about 30 years ago, I was driving on 57. A paperhead flew out of my car. So I pulled over on the expressway going down 57, almost at the Route 30 mile marker. And when I pulled over, there was a car that pulled over besides me. And a lady got out and said, "Bob, are you okay?" And I looked, and it was Judge Elliott. You know, like, who does that? And here you come off the highway just to make sure that I was safe. I mean, it just, you know, it just speaks volumes. But when I saw that, and you know how that busy traffic is, but she saw enough to recognize, and I was a lot thinner then, you know, now I'm, but the thing is, I want to say kudos to a lot of the judges because you're in these situations, and I don't think enough credit or enough accolades has been given to what we do have here in Kankakee County.
Thank you. Any other new business? Mr. Kirkstra.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I move that we adjourn.
Do we have a second, Mr. Long? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.